here in Neely.
Thank you.
And Neely Fuller Jr. Oh, there you go. Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you for your welcome.
Yes. Another class on racism, white supremacy. This time we're going to use Colin Kaepernick as an issue, because some people have sort of elevated him to the Muhammad Ali status, or John Collins and Tommy Smith. And some people say, hey, he's not there yet because he's a millionaire, and this whole thing is a farce. It's not going to affect him. The very latest news, though, is the NAACP. They requested a meeting with the NFL. The NFL so far hasn't responded. The NAACP says if they blow them off before the start of the season, they're going to call for a boycott. But is this issue, Neely Fuller Jr., is this what you see as racism, white supremacy? Is this what's being played out here in front of our very eyes?
What are they specifically saying that's being done that shouldn't be done or should be done?
I tell you what, hold that thought right there. I'll let you respond. I hear the drummer's woman telling us we got to take a quick break and check the traffic and weather. We'll hit that when we come back right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. So you're just getting off work. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. Some people say Dr. Francis Gus Wilson said that he was her mentor. Some other people say different, but we'll say that Neely Fuller Jr. is Dr. Wilson's mentor. He's joining us. Another class on racism, white supremacy. Here's the deal, Neely Fuller Jr. Colin Kaepernick has been taking a knee since last season, some part in last season when the national anthem is being played, and he was saying to draw attention to the amount of African Americans killed by the police under suspicious circumstances. Since he first took that knee, 233 black Americans have been shot by the police. 233, folks. This is since Colin Kaepernick started his protest. And since this season, he's a free agent, Neely Fuller Jr., and the teams in the league are sort of ignoring him. They won't sign him, and some people feel there's collusion behind it. So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, if it has anything to do with racism, it comes under what I've written in the textbook for victims of racism. My textbook, that's one of the supplementary titles. Textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. So now, if the gentleman in question thinks that there's racism involved in whatever he's talking about, he has a duty, but it is his choice. But according to counter-racist logic, if you're against racism, that's what counter-racist logic is, being against racism. Then it's his patriotic duty to take a stand against it. Now, the way that he goes about doing it is his choice. And I think that might have something to do with the contract that he has and all like that. Because whatever you say in your contract with anyone, your word you should stand by your word. Words are very important. So if a person voluntarily says something or makes a contract with someone or with a group of someone's, then whatever the stipulations are in that contract, in my opinion, a person should stick by it or make another contract. But generally speaking, any victim, any person who perceives himself or herself to be a victim of racism has a guaranteed qualification for speaking out in whatever avenue they choose to do, as long as it's not harming anybody, as long as it's not making a problem for someone. And then they have to specify what that problem is. But that's a patriotic duty to speak out against racism if you're a victim of racism. And in the textbook that I have written, the textbook for victims of white supremacy, there's a stipulation in there, a suggestion in there, that comes under victims guaranteed qualification. If you're a victim of white supremacy, you are guaranteed the qualification to say what you choose to say against racism. You are qualified to do that. And no one is supposed to step forward and say you're not qualified to do that, because if the victim is not qualified to say, and I'm talking about say, S-A-Y, or express opposition to racism in any of its forms, racism in the form of white supremacy, of course, then that person is guaranteed that qualification. I call it VGQ so that people can remember it. You're guaranteed, victim's guaranteed qualification. You are automatically qualified by being a victim to say what you want to against racism. You know, that doesn't include name-calling people, anything like that, or cursing somebody out and all like that. But racism itself, without individualizing it, you can take you can say what you want to. You should be guaranteed that qualification. And if no one says that they're going to guarantee that qualification, you just do it yourself. And that's a part of what victim's guaranteed qualification is. It means you take the initiative and say, I know I'm guaranteed this because I said so. Because if the victim is not guaranteed the qualification to speak out against racism and being a victim of it, then who has that guarantee? That's the question. That's the logical question. That would be the legal question. That would be the so-called, if there is such a thing, the moral question. If the victim, the person who is actually the person who is actually being mistreated in the system of white supremacy, not speak out against white supremacy in whatever forum or form that person wants to speak out in, according to his or her own choice, as long as you're not injuring someone else. And that would be a question, who is the person injuring by speaking out against racism? Is he doing harm to someone who shouldn't be harmed? Because the racists who inflicted harm should always be harmed until they stop being racist. See, racists should not be immune from someone speaking out against racism. Racism is not valid nowhere on the planet. It should not be. But the white supremacists say that it is, that it's just fine to be a white supremacist. People who are victims of white supremacy, since white supremacy always has victims. Otherwise, why protest something where there are no victims? But you can take if you are incorrectly enslaved or jailed, and you're jailed incorrectly. See, we're talking about non-correctness here. If you are in jail, and black people have throughout the planet are in jail, we were sentenced before we were born for a crime. What was that crime? The crime of having color in your skin. That's what white supremacy is about. They have convicted all of the non-white people on the planet of a criminal act. And that criminal act was being born non-white. Black, brown, red, yellow. That's the white supremacists stand themselves. And that's a incorrect way of doing business. You convict somebody on account of color. When you examine that, it doesn't make sense to say you're going to be denied this and denied that and all like that even before you were born. And when you show up, you're going to be in our world prison called the system of white supremacy. Now, any non-white person who says this is incorrect and I'm going to speak out against it is guaranteed the qualification just by birth and under those circumstances to say what he or she chooses to say. That's the formula. That's the logic.
Well, let me jump in and ask you this then. So how do we process, because this issue is sort of dividing the community with those supporting Colin Kaepernick, what he's doing, and then you have some, especially athletes who play the game of football, and they're saying that that's not the place for it. He's out of place. Should just shut his mouth and just play football, and it's a distraction. That's the latest one. One of the latest players says it was a distraction. How do we, looking at what's going on, it's sort of a spectacle because we're not, directly involved in it. So how do we process it? Which side do we fall on then? I guess that's my question.
The logic is, I just said it. Every individual victim. See, we always look at it like a collective. We're not a collective. We're just a bunch of prisoners, truth be told. Prisoners don't have any say-so about anything. The warden makes the call, and the warden, world warden, is every white person who believes in white supremacy. That's the warden of the world prison for all non-white people. So black, brown, red, yellow people, tan, beige people, people who are called off color, are just walking around in the prison yard. So if one prisoner says, I'm going to take a knee in protest against the warden, we don't have anything to do with that. I know I don't. I'm not running the prison. That's between him and the warden. Just like anything that I fall out with the warden about. I don't have any power. I'm a prisoner of war. We're all, if you're black on this planet in 2017, you are already a prisoner of war. You're not trying to, somewhere out in the woods, trying to run from captivity. You were captive before you were born because you were born in prison. So I can have my opinions about what another prisoner is doing. I'm saying, well, I won't do that. I'm not taking no knee. Because I'll fall out with the warden, all right? But that's still between that individual. The individual can come to me and say, well, I think that I'm going, we're going to have a ceremony here in the prison tomorrow, and, I'm going to take a knee at that ceremony because I'm sending the warden a message. So he's not sending me a message. He's sending the warden a message. That's every person that believes in white supremacy because he's protesting racism. If I understand what he's protesting. Now, if he's protesting something else, then that's another story. All right? I don't have anything to say about that because my book is written about victims of white supremacy, racism. All right? If it doesn't have anything to do with racism, and I don't know of anything that does not have anything to do with racism, if you're black, then what he's doing is valid, but it has nothing to do with my opinion. I can voice my opinion to the other prisoners. I can even tell him, I don't think you're going about doing this right, man. Just between me and you, I don't think, I ain't doing it. And I don't think you should do it, But if that's what you committed to do, you got VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification. You're qualified to do it. No one can say that you are not qualified to do it. And with a straight face and believes in justice. No. You're just a fellow prisoner. So this is strictly between you and the warden and all the wardens of this great big prison called the system of white supremacy.
And why don't we jump in here, and you still use that metaphor of us being in the prison. So when do we fight back? When do we revolt?
Well, that's what the gentleman you're telling me about is doing. You do the best you can when you're a prisoner of war. All you have
right. Well, hold that thought right there because we got to take a break. But I want when collectively, not just one person, but I want you to address that when we come back. Folks, you too can join the conversation with Neely Fuller Jr. Reach out to us, 800-450-7876. It calls in next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. The number to call to speak to Neely is 800-450-7876. We're discussing the Colin Kaepernick issue, and Neely Fuller Jr. usually goes back to the warden, and we're all in jail, I guess all in prison and walking around. One prisoner decides to revolt. That's Colin Kaepernick. And my question to him is, when do all of us get behind him and back him and start this revolt that everybody in the prison yard starts to turn on the warden? So, Neely Fuller Jr., you responded to that, and so I'm going to let you finish your response.
You respond to it simply by when someone comes along in the prison yard and say, what do you think about what he's doing? He's out there taking a knee on the warden. What do you think about what he's doing, Fuller? Now, according to what I've written, I'm duty-bound to say one thing. He's doing what he's doing. See, words are a form of action. We don't have a code, all right? Every prisoner in a prison of war should have a code. In fact, when you are captured as a prisoner of war, they say you give what? In some armies, not in all, but they say you give your name, rank, and serial number. That's it. You don't say nothing else. Name, rank, and serial number. You give your name, you give your rank. If you are supposed to be in captivity and whatnot, and you're a soldier because you're supposed to be fighting against being captured, you don't have no business being captured in the first place based on color. Captured, and thrown on a ship, and your ancestors all thrown on a ship, and then taken somewhere where you don't know where you're going or what you're going to be doing when you get there. That's your legacy. And no truce in this war, because that was war, has ever been called. No peace treaty has ever been signed. So we are still prisoners of war, because that was war. When you take somebody and put a rope around their neck or a chain and put their chains around their ankles and whatnot and drag them somewhere, and then generations and generations and generations, and then you tell them that they are free, but you weren't telling the truth, because when you're free, you give a person compensation. You put a person on their feet. You know, prisoners are entitled to that. All right, prisoners of war. I mean, you know, when they're released, they have what they call compensatory setups, restitution. You build up the people that you have destroyed. They haven't done that. They have resisted that all the way, and say, just go for yourself. Like I think it was Mr. Floyd McKissick years ago, who said the slaves wasn't freed, they were fired. And so I looked at that, and I said, hey, go one step farther on that. So I said the slaves not only weren't freed, they were not only fired, they were transferred. You know, and that's the way it's been ever since. We're being transferred, just shuffled around. Right now, people are being moved out of the places where they stay, right here in Washington, D.C., or right across the line, I've been told. I mean, given 24 hours notice. Keep moving. Keep them squatters moving. Squatters, you know, we're supposed to be citizens, but we just shuffle around. But when I came on the air just a few minutes ago, we were talking about schools. This is not 1957. This is not 1955. In the Northwestern Hemisphere, in what's supposed to be an empire of people who have tons of money to burn, food to throw away. And you have people arguing about, on the basis of color, education, the second area of activity, like I have it listed in our book. Here it is, 2017. We're arguing about the same issues that existed in 1940 or 1955 or 1957. And so, oh yes, collectively, because your question was what we'll do collectively. We should tap into the one thing that we haven't been doing. We need a code for these prisoners of war, which is what we are. A code meaning certain things you do, certain things you don't do. And in this specific instance, because we got to get down to solutions. When someone asks me, just like I'm being asked about this gentleman, I say he's doing what he's doing. Well, what do you think about what he said about it? He said what he said. See, that's a standard answer. That's a codified answer. Some years ago, someone asked me about a very prominent minister who gave what some people said was a very scathing speech. I mean, you know, it made a lot of black people nervous and whatnot about racism and whatnot. And they said, well, Fuller, what do you think about what this minister said the other day? You know, what do you think about it? I said, I think he said what he said. See what I mean? I stuck right to the code. They say, well, what do you think about what he said? I said, I think about he said what he said. So you don't deviate. That's what a code is about. Once you lock on to what works, you don't move 1 inch from it, word for word. And see, we need a code for everything. Whereas, you know, we go around trying to reinvent the wheel every time something happens. Well, let's have a debate about this and debate. No, if we have a code, we already know what to say. And that's where you get your unity. Because all unity in an army, in a prison camp, in a school, all unity on a job comes from having a code. Meaning what? When you do it, it works. It always works. Otherwise, it doesn't have any business being a code. So what do you do in ingredients in a code for thought, speech, and action? You know exactly what to say and what not to say. Anytime anything happens, and you always say the same thing until it doesn't work. Then you go back to the drawing board. But as long as it works, as long as it's logical, and this is why we should get away from the emotional part in trying to write a code, which is what I've tried to attempt to do with the book that I've put out, the textbook for victims of white supremacy, to be a sort of a blueprint, the beginning of a blueprint, because the code doesn't end until all problems are solved. So you say, what's the best thing to say when you have to say something? On a job or anything, what is the very best thing that can ever be said when something happens on your job? And you try to find that out. That takes a lot of thinking. You might have to think for months or for years. Like in some things that I put in my textbook, I had to think about it for years. Like when people started talking about saluting the flag or saying a pledge to the flag. What's the best thing to do if you're black? What's the very best thing that you can do that is foolproof, that nobody can assail and make sense? Nobody can criticize it and make sense, because everything that you do, if it's logical and constructive, has to make sense. So I'm going to go back to what I said again before we lose that train of thought. When they asked me about this gentleman, if someone would come and ask me, what do you have to say about what he did? Mr. Fuller, or Dumbbell Fuller, or whatever you want to call me. Call me anything. I'm going to pay attention to the question. And I'm going to say, I think that he said what he said. And I'm not deviating from that. And you can ask me about Reverend Jesse Jackson or Dr. Dick Gregory, who just passed away. Well, what do you think about what he said back in 1977 or something like that? And I got the same answer. Dr. Dick Gregory said whatever he said. And then, after you ask me 2 or 3 times and I give that same answer, then I'm going to say, may I ask you a question? Because I'm going to get permission to ask the question first. And if the person says yes, I'll say, what do you think about what he said, sir? What do you think about what he said? You're asking me about what some other victim of white supremacy said about racism. What do you say? And in particular, if I'm talking to a white person, you're asking me, and I'm going to give you an answer, because I'm supposed to have an answer for all questions. That's codification too. Even if the answer is I don't know, that's an answer. But the correct answer, I think, for any non-white person, anywhere on the planet, any time of day or night, and they ask me about something that some other non-white person said about racism, the answer is always, he said what he said. She said what she said. And if it's a committee, they said what they said. Now, if you want an editorial on it, go ask them. Go talk to them. That's my suggestion, if you don't mind me suggesting something, because I'm going to get permission to make a suggestion. And that's going to be, if they say yes, well, you make a suggestion. I asked you, and you're saying he said what he said. Now, what do you suggest that I say? I say, well, I suggest that question that you asked me, you go and talk to them about it. They're the ones that made the statement. They're the ones who did whatever they did. So I'm quite sure that the person who said it or did it, if they took a knee or whatever it is, you can ask them, what does that mean? Don't ask me. I didn't do it. Thank you very much, sir. Or do you have any other questions? Do you have any other suggestions for me? Just like in court, I always say, in the system of white supremacy, everybody is on trial.
All right.
Everybody.
That thought right there. We got to take a quick break here and check the traffic and weather. And we got some people want to speak to you. Folks, you too can join the discussion with Neely Fuller Jr. Reach out to us. 800-450-7876 gets you in. Your calls are next after the traffic and weather update right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. We're discussing the Colin Kaepernick case. We'll get back to that in a moment. Just want to remind that Radio One, now Urban One, the largest African-American owned and operated media company in the entire world that also targets African Americans, is somehow not included in the new National Museum of African American History and Culture. Now, it's a worthy and necessary campaign to be included for the tens of thousands of black folks, those on the air and those in the audience as well. For them, Radio One is their voice and main source of information and entertainment, and it is doing so unparalleled. Radio One's impact is African American history and culture, so we're asking for your help to change that. Like right now, we want Urban One included in this museum. Please call the founding director. His name is Lonnie Bunch III, and his number is 202-633-4751. I'll give you his number again, 202-633-4751. We're going to keep this campaign going until Urban One's history is included in our museum. I mentioned that our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. Folks, you got to listen very, very carefully to Neely Fuller Jr. because he uses logic, cause and effect. You know, you just can't listen with one ear. You got to be both ears. You got to be clued into this. It's not this one of the kind of discussions where you can just halfway, you got to put your foot in there all the way, just not your toes. And the number to call to get in, 800-450-7876. Ben's been holding for a while. He's calling from the district. Ben, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Oh, yes, Counselor, can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Counselor?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Counselor, first of all, you're way above my pay grade, but answer this for me. We can talk until we're blue in the face, but we're not going to get reparations from the white race. So do you think it's about time to move on from that issue instead of continuing to beat a dead horse? Yes, the Jews got reparations, the Japanese, but with blacks, it's not going to happen. So shouldn't we be trying some other positive, proactive action among ourselves and stop, unfortunately, beating a dead horse? Because we know the white supremacists, to say the least, are unfair and will never admit their wrongs. So how do we move on from this issue of reparations? And why shouldn't we move on and stop beating a dead horse? And I'll hang up and listen up on the radio. I really do appreciate it.
All right, and Ben, before you go, we don't get blue in the face. So one of the first things you do got to understand about racism, system of racism and white supremacy, you're using their words. We don't get blue in the face, so at least most of us don't. We're black. So just remember that when you're speaking, because sometimes it creeps in there and you don't understand. But I'll let Neely Fuller respond to your question. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Carl.
Yes, I'm talking about a code, C-O-D-E. That's the only thing that has been missing in solving the problem of racism. That's the only thing that's been missing. The racists, each and every individual white person that believes in white supremacy, practices white supremacy. How do they go about practicing white supremacy? Each and every individual white person, I'm not talking about all white people, but I'm talking about the most powerful people on the planet when it comes to color and how to treat people on the basis of color, are those white people who believe in and who practice the system of white supremacy. Now, how do they go about practicing that? By each individual white person who believes in the system of white supremacy having an individual code. I'm going to repeat that again because most black people, including myself when I first started out, don't understand this at all. We think that unity is some type of magical thing that comes from the other side of the moon. Well, I don't know what we think. I don't even know what I was thinking when I was thinking, except I was just saying something ought to be done. Something ought to be done. Something ought to be done. I would go to meeting after meeting. And it doesn't make any difference how many people attended the meeting, how big the rally was, and how many flags were waved. Something ought to be done. That's what I got out of just about every meeting. And at a certain point, something clicked. And I said, oh, you can get black people together in 5,000 meetings. And they can all chant. We have all kind of chants. And we can all say something in unison, like, we want justice now. We want justice now. We are not going to wait. We want it today. We want it yesterday. We want it forever. And then speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker after speaker comes to the podium and repeats the same thing. And then everybody goes to the parking lot exhausted and say, well, that was a good meeting for the 10 millionth time. But what was missing was an individual code, and the white supremacists know that. That's why they don't mind this type of exercise, because every white supremacist knows what to say. Every day, they know exactly what to say. When they're around black people, they know exactly what to say and what not to say. And the most skillful ones always say something that makes them more powerful. They don't come away from a conversation without being more powerful. See, that's a code. You have to have a code to do that as an individual. See, we keep talking about the masses. There's no such thing as the masses. It's individuals doing things each and every day according to what? A code. And what is that code? Cause and effect. The same laws that govern the entire universe, like an eclipse. These are laws. You know that these things are going to happen. You know that it's going to rain at a certain time. Why? Because all the indications are there. That's a code. That's a code that's produced by what? By the Creator, the creator of the universe. But black people, all of us collectively, have been very carefully trained by the white supremacists to not have an individual code, where each individual knows exactly what to say word for word in every circumstance and what not to say, rather than just run up and down the hall screaming when somebody uses the N-word and says, you know, I can't stand it. I ain't going to work in this place no more, blah, 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 blah. That's not according to a code. Now, what have I written as a suggestion for a code? Because a code really starts with suggestions. Suggestions about what? What an individual person can do each and every day. And does it work all the time? No, it's not going to work most of the time when you start out. But how is a code formulated? Trial and error. Just like a scientist in a laboratory. Trial and error. You find out that water is wet and that gasoline is also wet. But water is not the same as gasoline. Now, how did you find this out? By trial and error. Somebody might even got burned because they threw a match into the water and the match went out. So then they saw something that looked like water and threw a match in it, and it was gasoline. And they had to get out of there real quick. Why? Because they had an explosion or a fire. So they say, well, there's a difference between water and gasoline. See, I'm talking about the laws of the universe. In fighting racism, if you tap into the laws of the universe as an individual person, each and every day, you are getting in touch with the creator of the entire universe. You don't get in touch with other black people. What does a bunch of prisoners know, except being prisoners? But each prisoner, like Andy Dufresne in the movie Shawshank Redemption, he just went around, if he asked any prisoner to help him do anything, it was to get some equipment for him to tap into the laws of the universe. And he worked his way up into the warden's office. And now, ordinarily, a person would say, yeah, that's a typical Tom, working his way up to the warden's office. He scientifically worked his way up into the warden's office so he could get what? More information about how the warden operates. That's scientific, folks. That's codification at its best. Information. 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 If you don't have information as an individual person, you're not going to be able to function. You're not going to be able to help, first of all, yourself, and you're not going to be able to help anybody else. But we have been told that unity is a whole bunch of black people in the middle of a street, shoulder to shoulder, jumping up and down in one place. And that somehow, after we get tired, some kind of magic is supposed to happen. And the white supremacists look at that and they say, hey, as long as they don't have a code that's coming out of this, they're right back where they started, and they can do this for 10 million years, and the result will be the same. I hope I've answered the question, because we're talking about unity. How do you get unity? You get it through a code. You don't have your allegiance to any other black person. Your allegiance is to a code that works for you, because the theory is, and has been proven all down through history, you solve the problems of each individual, and you have solved the problems of all individuals. That is a mathematical fact. We need political mathematics in the form of a code of thought, speech, and action. What to say, what to do. What to say, what to do. That always gets the result, when nobody else is around, gets the result that you are trying to get as an individual. Rather than say, oh, woe is me, I can't do nothing, I can't even think. I can't even lift a spoon until I go and gather up a whole bunch of other black people and we all lift the spoon together. That's not even logical. And it's not going to happen. Why? Because the white supremacists ain't going to let that happen no way. We're in their prison yard.
All right.
You can only do so many things.
All right, hold that thought right there. Yes, sir. Hold that thought right there. We got to take another break so our stations can identify themselves at the top of the hour. Folks, our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. And I always say you've got to listen really, really keen, because he uses logic to explain his actions about racism and white supremacy. 800-450-7876 gets you in. We'll take your calls next. Right here, it's the Big Show. It rolls on from FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show. Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio.
Thank you for staying with us, folks. So we're just getting off work. Happy Thursday to you. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. And, of course, his book is called The Code. That's a short term for it. That's why he keeps mentioning the code. And I'm going to let him tell you how you can get a copy of it. But really, you got to listen very, very keenly. It's not one of these shows that you can halfway listen and think you're going to catch everything. And those of you who've taken logic in college, you understand it's cause and effect. I didn't catch it the first time, I'll be honest with you, and didn't even catch it the second time. After a while, I kind of go, oh, wow, Eureka, it turned on. But I understand it. So I understand if some people don't get it right away. Keep listening. It will come. Trust me. 800-450-7876 is the number to call to get in. Paula's waiting for us. She's calling from Washington, D.C. She's on line 1. Paula, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Well, thank God I took logic when I was in college, too. And I think that word supreme is listed in the Webster's Pocket Dictionary right before the word for supremacy. And supreme is a powerful force, a God. It's equated with something good. You know, you wouldn't say we don't usually say people are supremely ignorant or supremely ugly. We use another adjective. I think we should get chased to the point, and I use my 12-year-old mind to say that we should say wide stupidity. And wide, not white, but W-Y-D-E. W stands for those worst humans, because that's who the KK represents. KKK represents the worst of the humans. And then Y. Y-W-H-Y. Y stands for Urugu. That book by Dr. Marimba Ani, which is a critique of European thought and behavior. All them folks did was do war. They war with each other from sun up to sun.
Paul, do us a favor. Can you put it in a question form so Mr. Fuller can respond?
The question is, why not just get off the word supremacy and just deal with white stupidity? We know those people are stupid. Founded on their logic.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond to that. Thank you, Paula. She says, why we hung up on the word supremacy.
The answer to that is the word stupid would not fit the white supremacists. The white supremacists of this world are the smartest and most powerful people who have ever appeared on this planet in modern history. And prehistory, I mean, that's something else. Or going back to the time, 2,000 years ago maybe, because some people have said that the white supremacists go back around 2,000 years. Supreme just means one thing. That's why I have a word guide so that people don't get I can understand how people can get confused. And the white supremacists thrive off of confusion. That's why they are the masters of words. So it's just recently that they have started using the term white supremacy. I mean, in a loose way. And in just on the news every day. Stop and think about it. You haven't heard that term being used until recently. It's because they have figured, in my opinion, they are making a move now that they're going to commandeer the word and use it in a different way from what I've been using. They're going to steer it away. They're going to take it. They'll use it the way that I'm using it now. That's how they're using it now, to the extent that a white supremacist has anything to do with the way it's being used now. But little by little, they're going to steer away that meaning so that it cloaks their supremacy. Supreme just means that a person, when it comes to talking about racism, which is racism and white supremacy are one and the same. There's no other form of racism. Racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. And there's only one race. That's the white race. They invented that, just like they invented a political system and a religious system called the system of white supremacy. It's the most successful operation that the world has ever seen for mistreating people. But you can't mistreat people efficiently and have people under your thumb and make them do what you want them to do endlessly and be stupid. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. It takes a smart person to be able to tell another person what to do consistently, and that person hops to it and does it. Now, the question is raised. Who's smart and who's stupid? The person who's doing the telling or the person who's doing the hopping? See, black people let their feelings take over, and their feelings are the cause of our destruction over and over again, because it makes us feel bad to have to face the truth, when the truth is the only thing that ever helped anybody to get out of a hole. If I'm at the bottom of a well, I'm not going to sit there and say I'm in paradise, because now I have really lost it, and I am insulting my Creator, because I have to recognize I'm in bad shape. I am in terrible shape. Now, everybody who's going out for football understands this. We can understand it when we're going out for football, but when it comes to anything else, we don't understand it at all. I mean, you don't walk out on a field and just say, I'm an NFL quality football player, and this is the first time you've ever even seen a football field. It doesn't work like that. That coach will tell you, you're in bad shape. You're way overweight. You haven't lifted any weights. You haven't done any work at all to prepare yourself for the NFL. I'm not hiring you. I don't want you on my team. And you come out here and play football. I mean, we got the Super Bowl coming up, and I just take you off the street, and you've never even been to a game. Now, any owner or coach that would want somebody like that on the football field, Super Bowl day, let's let the mathematics tell you. Is that going to work? You can't even call a signal. But you come on the field saying everybody else is stupid. And I'm not talking about the caller. I'm not making an analogy there. I'm just saying, I used to think that way. But that's not logical thinking, because I was letting my emotions say, these people ain't all that great. But then I had to ask a very logical question. Well, if they ain't all that great, why is it that when they say, Fuller, you pick up that gun and shoot somebody? You come and beg me for a job. You go to this school or that school, but don't go to that school there and that school there. Don't you dare go into that restaurant, or I will hurt you. And I say, yes, sir. No, ma'am. And I was doing that. Now, is that by magic? You know? I say, are these people dumb? Are they stupid? And I had to come to the conclusion, well, I don't know what you mean by stupid. I don't know what you mean by dumb. But I do know that they tell me what to do, and I do it. And they tell me that they're going to mistreat me on account of my color. And I say, yeah, that's what you all are doing. And they say, well, do you like it or not? I say, I don't like it. Say, well, what you going to do about it? And then I stand there with a big question mark over my head saying, well, maybe somebody ought to do something because I don't know what to do except what you tell me to do. And I did that, and I'm still doing it. I'm still a prisoner of war. Now, that means what? That I'm being governed by people who can tell me what to do, but I can't tell them nothing. I can't make them do nothing, but they can make me do everything. So the question is, who's stupid and who's smart? That's the only question, regardless of how Fuller feels about it. But the first step toward not being stupid is to realize that you are. And be willing to tell yourself the truth. Because it's just like a cancer. I can go to the doctor all day long and say, well, I don't feel like I should have cancer. I mean, you know, I just don't feel, I'm not the type of person that would have cancer. I mean, don't tell me nothing like that. And the doctor says, you got cancer, but we can work on it and we can cure it. We got a formula. We got a code for curing cancer. That type of cancer you got. And if you get in here within the next 3 weeks, we can keep it from spreading, and then we can get rid of it. I don't want, yeah, but you told me I had cancer, and I don't want to hear it. I'm out of here. I'm going to a doctor that's going to tell me I ain't got cancer. Now, that is the mentality that the white supremacist has put in most of our minds, truth be told. We are totally afraid of the truth because it hurts. But a code will get us out of that. And you know what? You know who will fear that? The white supremacists. Because they know that as long as we don't have a code, they got us. But if we just start thinking about having one, they know they're in trouble. Because that's how they got in power. By trial and error. By cause and effect. By starting out not knowing anything. And then winding up knowing everything. Why? Because they started out saying, I don't know everything. But you know what? Before it's over with, I'm going to know everything that I need to know. But the first step toward learning anything is to recognize that you don't know. Mark Twain once said it, and I quote him all the time. He said, I was proud to be able to answer promptly. And I did. I said I didn't know.
All right, I got some more folks who want to speak to you. 800-450-7876. I know we come up on break real soon, but Sandra's waiting for us in the district. She's on line 2. Sandra, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Hi, Colin.
Well, hang on a second, Sandra. Yeah, hang on a sec. I hear the drummers warming up now. Let's take our last look at the traffic and weather, and then I'll let you pose your question to Neely Fuller. 800-450-7876. You too can join the discussion. We'll take your calls next as the big show rolls on from FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Wilson's mentor. Number to call to reach him is 800-450-7876. Another class on racism and white supremacy. And he always says, if you don't understand how it works, everything else that you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. So, again, you've got to listen real close to what he's saying, use his logic and cause and effect, and then you'll understand. Let's go back to Sandra, who reached out to us right before we left for the traffic update. Sandra, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Hi, Colin, Dr. Fuller. You say white supremacists. It seems like they're more like cunning and crafty than supremacists. And it seems like they think they are opposite of supremacists. They feel inferior, so they have to be crafty and cunning. I'd like to hear your remarks.
I'm going to say it again. Anyone who can tell me what to do, and I have to do it, no matter how terrible it is. I'm afraid to not do it. You know, you come to work here, you come to work there, lift that bale, tote that barge, get a little drunk, and you land in jail because I'm going to put you there. Go to the school that I want you to go to, and don't go to any other school. Don't you do anything to displease me. Now, you can call it cunning. You can call it terrible. You can call it anything you want to. You can say it ain't supreme. But you better believe, if Neely Fuller Jr. is doing what this person tells him to do, and he can't tell this person to do nothing, and they got to do it, Neely Fuller is, in his way of thinking, will come to that conclusion, because I came to that conclusion, and that's I'm predicating everything that I'm saying on this. You can't solve a problem until you know you really got one, and you better not make a mistake in analyzing that problem just so you can feel good by changing the words. I have a person or a group of people telling me every move to make while I'm on this planet, and I better not make any other moves. And I can't tell them nothing and make it stick, because I got nobody to back me up. I'm completely helpless. I'm a baby in their prison that they built before I was born, and I was born in that prison. The warden always tells the prisoners what to do. The prisoners don't tell the warden nothing. Why? Because the warden is the warden, and the prisoners are the prisoners. Now, a person might say, well, the warden is mean. You better believe the warden is mean. So what? He's still telling me what to do. Okay? Well, I'll feel better if I say the warden is stupid. Yeah. So go to your cell and feel better. And the warden will feel better that you think the warden is stupid. But when you wake up in the morning, you're still in prison. Now, that's the analogy, folks. Worldwide. I hope I'm speaking worldwide, because everybody is looking for some words to hide behind. That was my reaction. Oh, that makes me feel so bad. Oh, I don't want to admit that I've been took. I've been had. I've been shook up. I've been bamboozled. There's nothing incorrect about facing the truth. Somebody once said what? And it's not me. The truth will make you free. Now, if they want to use Bible as guidance and whatnot, I think that the people that people talk about, now I'll just say this because a lot of people kind of understand it by putting it in a Bible frame, Holy Bible, and they say there was a person named Jesus. And they say that Jesus, didn't kid around and fool himself about what was going on. He said the situation here is terrible. This ain't no paradise. This is awful. And somebody said, hey, don't go around saying that. This is paradise. And everything that you see going around you is just wonderful. You're misleading the people. And if you don't stop it, we're going to kill you. Well, most of the people that I went to who said they know something about Bible, they said, where this person named Jesus was concerned, you know how that ended. But he didn't back down because the truth was so ugly. There is such a thing, some people say, is an ugly truth. But really, I say that's not true. All truth is beautiful, even when you don't like it. Because once you really realize what is really going on rather than what you wish was going on, that's when you start becoming a doctor of correcting what needs correcting. And everybody in history has had to face that. Gandhi faced it. That person that people say is Jesus of Nazareth. I guess Moses had to face it if you're talking about the Bible route. A person named Muhammad. I mean, he got people who say, hey, Don't say that. That makes me feel bad. He said, well, it's the truth. Well, yeah, it's the truth, but hey, I don't want to hear that kind of truth. Give me something that I can feel good about. Give me some opium. Give me some drugs. I want to feel good. I want to feel good all the time. You're telling me something that's going to make me feel bad. I can't stand that. Yeah, but it's the truth. I don't want to hear that. Well, these people are going to harm you, Moses, if you stay here. You better find a way out of here. That's what some preacher told me a long time ago. And so, he got busy and did the mathematical thing. He said, yeah, we're going to cross some water, and hope that water open up so we can get to the other side. I mean, we ain't got no guarantee, but that's the way we're going because we can't stay here. They're going to kill us. All right? Nobody wanted to hear that. Okay? So I didn't intend to go in that direction, but I was saying it out of what I wrote. But what I'm writing is just talking about the logic that comes with the universe. Martin Luther King got criticism from people in his own church. But he said, hey, I got to go. They said, well, we can stay here and be comfortable forever. All we got to do is just keep coming to church. I mean, Martin said, yeah, but my church is not only just in these four walls. My church is wherever things are going on that shouldn't be going on. And maybe I ought to get out here and back up those people who are trying to correct something that needs correcting. And I was around during that time, and there was a lot of people who said, he ain't doing nothing but making trouble. Now, some of those people who were saying that when he was trying to get the buses desegregated, as they say, they were some of the first people on the front seat of the bus. Yet they were criticizing him, all right? Because he just faced up to the truth. The truth is very unpleasant. I mean, all over this planet, if you face the truth. And just because it makes you feel bad, changing the words won't change the situation, except if you select words that will help you correct the situation. Now, that's words that you can use, but words that's going to lead you away from the truth, that's never going to help. You can't call cancer something else and make it not cancer. You got to call it what it is.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. Thanks for your call.
Is what we're dealing with.
Right.
These are people who are in a supreme position. That's all it is. They don't have to stay there. There's a code for getting rid of that. But you got to face it. They're in a supreme position. Don't say you're not a prisoner when you are.
You often say that we talk too much, that we just have conversations when we shouldn't have conversations between each other. There are times, and you keep mentioning that we should, when we communicate with each other, we should have a code. Can you expound on that?
That's what I mean by a code. And part of the code is we should know there never should be an argument it's the difference between an argument and a discussion. That's why I say that everything that Neely Fuller says should be doubted. Oh, yeah. Like all the things that I've said in this program, taking up all this time, every word that I have spoken on this program, every black person who is listening to this, every non-white person throughout the world should say, that guy don't know what he's talking about. That's the first thing that you should say. Which means what? Now you're thinking. So if I don't know what I'm talking about, if I'm not making the correct suggestion, you have already made the first step just by even criticizing me toward going in the direction you should go. So the code says, hey, if you disagree with Fuller, and you should disagree with Fuller, that should be your first reaction. And keep disagreeing with him until you find out what the truth really is. Because some people have said, I'm not even telling the truth. There's no such thing as white supremacy. White people ain't got no power over black people. I mean, to make them do things that they don't want to do. That ain't so. There are a lot of black people who say that. And I say, rather than go with Neely Fuller when he says that white supremacy exists, go with something else. Say, it doesn't exist. And nobody tells me what to do. I do what I want to do. But don't lie to yourself, ever. Because of what? Truth will come to the surface anyway, whether Neely Fuller says it or not. Now, the person who says nobody tells me to do anything that I don't want to do, go ahead and prove it to yourself. Don't ever try to prove it to Neely Fuller.
Right. Hold that thought right there, because we got to take another break. Hang on a sec, because we're getting a real critical issue here, and I want folks to listen real keenly to what you have to say. Folks, you want to join the discussion? It's 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next as the big show rolls on from FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us and our guest, Neely Fuller Jr. You know, Dr. Wilson puts it another way. She says that if we're doing something that delights the oppressor, then we're caught up in the system of racism, white supremacy. They don't have to do anything. We're just hating on each other. We're just tearing each other down. That's part of it. And she mentioned all the areas, and hopefully Neely Fuller will mention all the areas that racism, white supremacy works in. But I'm going to let you finish up your statement, because you told us earlier that we have too many, we talk to each other too much and we have nothing really to say. And I want you to finish expounding on that.
Well, it's a matter of what we say, should have constructive effect. Now, I'm not sure that what I'm doing, the way I'm going about doing it right now, but I think that I'm doing it the correct way, because I'm telling people to actually question everything that I'm saying and really denounce it. The people who are calling in saying, well, maybe I'm not using the correct word. I should use a better word than supremacy. But it's one thing I have noticed from experience. When I use the term white supremacy around white people, the white people go silent. It's the black people who do the talking. Even when there are white people who are saying a lot, they go silent. It's a reason for that. Now, I can dance around it and I can say, well, there are some people among us who don't have the right attitude, and, and I can go on. But when I say white supremacy, the white supremacists among the white people who are present, they know exactly what that means, because they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly the position that they're in. They're the most powerful people in the world, but they want to make it look like that they are not. And many of them, the most skillful ones, will tell you in a minute, I'm not a white supremacist. I don't get any benefits from being white. What are you talking about? I don't even think about this type of thing. Buddy, I just drive a truck, mind my own business. And I think you should do the same. You're around here, talking about I don't know nothing about that. Never heard of it. You're talking about something, you're speaking in a foreign language. See, that goes to show just how shrewd they are. They are the smartest people on this planet when it comes to mistreating people based on color. All right? And even now that they are beginning to use the term themselves, I'm not saying all the white people who use the term are racist, but I'm saying the white supremacists are now using the term, which means they have figured out a way that they're going to steer everybody away from it. But I'm going to stick with it, because it took me years to discover it and want to admit it. I was just like most of my callers this afternoon. I was saying, no, they're not supreme. They just, ain't nobody supreme. Things just kind of run on their own. Ain't nobody doing nothing. Ain't nobody supreme. Everybody's equal. We're just having a little misunderstanding. Well, it's not a little misunderstanding. It's a whole system put together in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And in every one of those areas of activity, when it comes to a person of color, people who used to openly call themselves white supremacists say, we are going to tell these people, these dark-skinned people all over this planet, what to do and what not to do, in all of these areas of activity, and we're going to figure out a way to keep them from doing anything about it. Because we're going to use not only naked force, violence, direct violence, we're going to use one of the worst forms of violence, and that is master deceit, masterful deception. We're going to fool them, and we're going to fool them so well that they are not going to even realize what they are in. They're not going to realize that they are in a world prison, because that's the best way to handle a bunch of prisoners, is to convince them that they're not in prison. And you don't even have to watch them. You can just go to sleep, because they think they're walking around, nobody tells them what to do. Things just happen. They just happen to get set out on the street. They just happen not to get a job. They just happen not to get educated. They just happen that their male-female thing ain't working. Somehow that's just all a mystery. It's a reason for everything, folks. And what I've tried to do with my feeble mind is tap into these reasons. There are reasons why things happen on this planet that should not happen. And I figured out it's caused by people. So it comes down to what people? Well, everybody altogether, and that is true. But what people are causing it more than any other people? The smartest people. Because according to any logic, the smartest people in any situation, if it's 10 people in a room and one person is smarter in most things than the other 9, that one person, even if that person is evil, is going to dominate the future of all of the 9 people in that room, and that is universal law, regardless of what Neely Fuller says or doesn't say, or anybody else that ever existed. I'm just giving you an illustration of 10 people in a room, not to say anything about a whole world. But it is true that if a person in one room, that 10th person, and there's 9 other people in the room, and that 10th person is telling all the other 9 everything about everything, and everything that 10th person is saying is leading them down an evil path. You've got 9 people who are following that smart person. That person is smart. That's not a dummy. It's the people who are following that evil path are dummies, if you want to name call, which I don't do. I just say they just don't know. They don't know what the person who is telling them all this stuff is up to. But when somebody holds up their hand and start asking questions, that's the first step. Because the first step towards solving any problem that should be solved is to ask questions. So it's not just a matter of people asking Neely Fuller questions. Ask the people who say that they are going to tell everybody else what to do. You always ask that person 1,000,000 questions. And don't stop asking questions until you get all the answers. And that's on a job and everything else. Why? Because it's universal law, not Neely Fuller's law. I don't have any laws. I just got a bunch of feeble suggestions. But it's a law of the universe that what? Every problem that's ever been solved was solved through the process of questions and answers.
(800-450-7876). Speak to Neely Fuller. Let's go to Tokiomo, who's joined us from the district. Tokiomo, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Hello, Carl. Thank you for taking my call, and hello to Mr. Fuller. I hear what you're saying, but I personally don't believe there's anything called white supremacy. What we see going on is a bunch of wickedness going on. Wickedness that's been going on ever since ancient time, and good people rally around to try to stop that wickedness. If there's any such thing as white supremacy, how come within that group of so-called white people, you have good-hearted people who are fighting against the system that is trying to put everybody else inside that so-called prison, you said. Everything is in your mind as an individual. If you accept that somebody is superior to you, then that person is going to be superior forever. That's all I have to say. There's no such thing. It's just a system of wickedness that Africans have to stand up to fight against the system of wickedness. Conscious Africans all over the world will have a duty and responsibility to fight against that system of wickedness that is putting us under this class as a people.
All right, let's give him a chance to respond. Thank you, Tokyomo.
Well, that comes under VGQ. The gentleman just said what some people have, I think, indirectly been saying all during this hour and a half program, 2-hour program. They have been saying, either directly or indirectly, there's no such thing as white supremacy. That the people who believe in mistreating people based on color are not in a supreme position. Because that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being better. I'm talking about being in a supreme position. I'll give another illustration. Maybe I can make the point. I was robbed on the street, Washington, D.C., December the 7th, 1984. The person that came up behind me took my money at gunpoint and got away. When I called the law enforcement people, I reported that the people who took my money against my will and got away, in effect, were, at the time that they took it and got away, and as far as I know, never been caught, they took my $40 and got away, threatening me with death if I didn't give it to them, which I did. 2 black males doing the routine thing that many, many black people do all over the world because they've been put in that position to do that. All right? I gave them the money. Now, I could have taken the position, y'all ain't nobody. Y'all don't know nothing. Probably haven't even been to school. All right? So I'm not paying no attention to you. You don't even exist. And you're definitely not supreme over me. You and that gun. Now, how about that? But I didn't choose to do that. Why? It wasn't logical. That's why.
All right, hold that thought right there. I know we're getting to the meat of it, but I want you to finish that thought on the other side because we got to take our last break. 800-450-7876 to speak to Neely Fuller Jr. We'll take your calls next as the big show rolls on from FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for rolling with us and our guest, Neely Fuller Jr. We'll get back to him in a second. Just to remind you that Radio 1 is now Urban One. That's the umbrella title of our company. It's the largest African-American owned and operated media company in the entire world, targeting African-Americans and somehow still not included in the new National Museum of African-American History and Culture. It's worthy and a necessary campaign to be included for the tens of thousands of black folks, on those on the air and those in the audience, all of us. Radio 1 is our voice and main source of information and entertainment, and Radio 1 is unparalleled. Radio 1's impact is African-American history and culture, so we're asking for your help to change that, like right now. We want Urban 1 included in this museum. Please call the founding director. His name is Lonnie Bunch III. His phone number is 202-633-4751. Again, that's Lonnie Bunch III, 202-633-4751. And we're going to keep this campaign going until Urban One's history is included in our museum. 800-450-7876 is the number now to speak to Neely Fuller Jr. Neely Fuller, before you finish your question, your response, I want you to give out the information how folks can get your book. Because a lot of people, when they hear about racism and white supremacy, and I'm glad that you brought it up, and Dr. Wilson did, now it's in the national lexicon. We hear white folks talking about it on TV, about these white supremacists, and you guys have been speaking about this for decades. So, but people get hung up on the word supreme. They're using it out of context from what you're using it. But I'm going to let you finish up your response.
You can get to the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is the method for ordering. All the information you need is right there at producejustice.com. Now, it's been my experience down through the years since I wrote the book which I first started writing as far back as 1957, all right? I've never seen not one reason to deviate from the term, the system of white supremacy. Why? Because it is an accurate description. There's such a thing, a lot of people say, well, yeah, but you're glorifying evil. I'm not glorifying anything. I'm talking against evil. But I am identifying what it is. The people who robbed me were in a supreme position. I want people to understand what you mean by supreme. See, you can be supreme one minute and completely helpless the next minute. Everybody's supreme over something. Stop and think about it, folks. You are supreme over picking up your telephone. Your telephone does what you tell it to do. Now, you can say the telephone is superior to you or inferior to you. The telephone is a telephone. That's what it is. It does what a telephone does. People are no different from anything else in the universe. Stop and think about it that way. The sun comes out. You can say the sun is supreme. A lot of people worship the sun. All right? What's supreme over the sun? Okay? And water is supreme when you're drowning. All right? But water is not supreme when you're just drinking a glass of water, when you're out in the desert and you are dying of thirst and you drink the water and you drink it in the proportion that you have control over. You have control over the water now. All right, because you're in the desert. I want to say this. This is very important. While you're drinking the water in the desert, that 1 cup of water, where you haven't had water in 2 days, you're just about gone. Now you found an oasis, and you dip the water out of the oasis, and you drink it. You have control over the water. You are, at that moment, supreme over the water. Folks, understand the word supreme. That just comes, that's a conditional thing, circumstantial thing. All right? You are, at that moment, when you're drinking the water, supreme over the water. You can drink the amount of water that you wish. There's more water there in that oasis. And when you drink your fill, you say, I'm not drinking anymore. But now, if you're in the ocean and you fall in the water and you're swimming, you are supreme over the ocean while you're swimming, because you're doing what you want to do in the water. But now, after 2 or 3 hours, you get what? Tired. Now the water becomes supreme over you. My goodness, can we understand that? When we talk about people, like the people who robbed me, they were supreme over me at that moment. It didn't say they were better than me. It didn't say that, that they believed in God. Or it didn't say that they had, a mansion somewhere. It didn't say that they were magic. They were in a position to do something that I didn't want them to do. But I was helpless at that moment in doing what was necessary to keep them from doing what I didn't want them to do. I didn't want to be robbed. I wasn't making a contribution. I wanted to hold on to my $40. And they told me at gunpoint, you try to hold on to your $40 and you're going to give up more than $40, like you're not going to be around in a muzzle flash tomorrow to talk to anybody about anything. Now, it's the $40 or you die. So I made a judgment call. Okay, take the $40. They took it. And as far as I know, they got away with it forever. But the question now is, why didn't I call them stupid and make a speech? Because of one logical conclusion that I came to. I don't think that will work. See, the universe is set up a basic on laws, regardless of how anybody feels about it. There are conditions in which you have something supreme over you. And then there are conditions in which you have supremacy over something else. The person who just got beat up on a street corner, the person that beat them up was supreme over that person. But that same person can go home, go to their place of residence, and there's a baby in the crib. The person is supreme over the baby. Why? The baby is helpless under those conditions. That's all it is. It's mathematics, folks. It's not how you feel. It's the mathematics of the universe. And all Neely Fuller is doing with his book and with this talk that he's of suggestions that he's making today, we need a code that tells us, follow the mathematics. Don't get, bamboozled or spaced out by some, how we feel about how some words are being used. Make the words work for you. I have found out that the term white supremacy works for me. When I talk to white people and I mention white supremacy, it works for me, not against me. And and I ask people, hey, if you don't think it works, try it. That's all I ever ask people to do. People call me from their job sometimes, and I said, go in and say this. Don't say this. Don't do any name calling. Don't be discourteous. See, it's a bunch of do's and don'ts, because that's all everything in the universe is. Do's and don'ts. Things that you do, things that you don't do. Things that you say, things that you don't say. That will produce what? That will produce the result that should be produced. That's all everything is. You go out and you use a plow. You don't want to use a plow maybe to plow the crops. You get tired. It wears you out. I've been behind a plow. The first time I got behind a plow, it was wearing me out. In 15 minutes, I was so tired, I didn't ever want to see a plow again. But, hey, you got to plow. If you want those crops to come up, you are going to have to plow. Now, you can get mad at the plow. You can get mad at the crops. You can say, I don't want it this way. But you might have to just go through some stuff in order to get to where you need to get to. That's a code. A plow and somebody behind it is a code. It's even better if you got a horse in front of the plow. That's a code. Somebody figured that out. That if you put a horse in front of the plow and get the horse to pull the plow, the horse has more strength. And you don't have to get into an argument about whether the horse is supreme or the plow is supreme. You just say, this is the way to make the crops grow. Why? Because I found out that when I plow this ground, I get a pretty good crop. You found that out by trial and error. So you go with what works. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. Now, I'm just talking about what works and what people who have talked to me, and after sometimes heated discussions. Oh, well, I don't think that'll work. I say, well, then don't try it if you don't. But if you decide to try it, if it doesn't work, the first person that I want to know, the first person that wants to know about that result is me, because I'm the one that told you. And if it didn't work, I want to know why. Because that's got to be changed. Because nothing should be in any kind of code. A fire code, a plumbing code, an electrical code, and it doesn't work, then the people who are calling in are correct. If, when they say that maybe I should change things, if it doesn't work, don't use it. And I say that even afterwards. Just because I'm saying it and putting another code on it and all like that, and keep sticking with it, Neely Fuller, after all these years, could still be incorrect in everything that he's saying. But in the textbook for victims of racism, you can go to by going to producejustice.com. I'm sticking with what I'm saying because I have found out from experience that some of the things that I have in my book, a lot of things I haven't tried myself. But I ask people to try it because it sounds logical. But if it doesn't work, I'm the first person that want to know it, because that needs to be modified or changed, just like people that make suggestions now about getting rid of this thing about white supremacy and just call it white stupidity. I don't think that'll work. I really don't. But I know that when I say white supremacy, it works for me, not against me. And always go with something that works for you. That's logical. That's logical. The creator of the universe, I believe, will tell you that. If it works for you in a constructive way rather than against you, then that's the best thing to do. Because you want to always do and say the best thing 24 hours a day. Anytime you open your mouth, you want to say whatever you say that's better than anything can ever be said by anybody. And if you do something, you want to do it the very best thing that can ever be done by anybody, anywhere in the universe, at any time, under those same circumstances. That's what codification is about.
And folks, thank you, Neely Fuller, for joining us. Hopefully they got it. If not, go on YouTube and look up Neely Fuller Jr. and you'll understand what he's talking about, racism, white supremacy. Thank you for that class again. And the last part was really clarify what you were all about. Folks, we got to get out of here. As usual, we're always running late, but stay strong and stay positive. We'll see you tomorrow, 4 o'clock, right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450, WOL, where information is power.